March 30th, 2023, 14:30 UTC. Inside the Beijing Institute of Vertebrate Paleontology and Paleoanthropology, a research assistant performed a task so routine it could almost be done blindfolded. DNA samples from newly acquired fossils had to be cataloged, analyzed, logged, cross-referenced with databases, a process repeated countless times in labs around the world. But today, the ordinary was about to become extraordinary. She was handling a skull that had been hidden for decades, emerging only recently from a well in Harbin, China, buried during the chaos of World War II. The Dragon Man skull had been studied extensively, its morphology and dimensions meticulously measured. Yet the genetic secrets it held remained untouched. She carefully inserted a fragment of the fossil into a sequencer and watched as the machine hummed, running its hours-long analysis. Her attention drifted to other samples, unaware that history was quietly about to shift. At 14:45 UTC, the routine was interrupted by a single beep. One of the sequencers had returned results from a priority screening, flagged by software as a potential match. She leaned closer to the monitor. The data suggested something impossible. The Dragon Man's DNA matched a species previously known only from a single fingertip discovered in Siberia, a species whose existence had been hypothesized through fragments, never confirmed in fossil form. The implications were immediate and staggering. For 80 years, this entire human species had been hiding in plain sight. She called her supervisor directly, bypassing standard notification protocols. The urgency demanded more than routine channels. Within minutes, her supervisor was at her side, eyes scanning the data, absorbing the implications. Verification followed immediately, using separate sample batches by a second technician. Within hours, the director had contacted the National Geographic Society. International scientific journals were being alerted. But as the flurry of institutional response unfolded, a single, unshakable question gripped every mind examining the findings. If these humans now identified as Denisovans had brains as large as modern humans and facial features suggesting advanced cognitive abilities, what did this mean for our understanding of human evolution? And how many other species could be hidden in the fossil record, waiting to rewrite history? For over a century, the story of human evolution was neat, linear, and comforting. Homo sapiens emerged in Africa roughly 300,000 years ago. Neanderthals, our closest relatives, thrived in Europe and Western Asia before vanishing around 40,000 years ago. Evolutionary trees were clean diagrams. A single common ancestor diverged. Each lineage traveled its path, and modern humans migrated from Africa, eventually replacing all other hominins. It was simple, coherent, and testable. Then, in 2010, a tiny bone smaller than a pencil eraser was found in Denisova Cave, Siberia. DNA analysis revealed it belonged to a completely unknown human species. For 15 years, science had the genetic blueprint, but no physical description. They existed in theory only, their appearance a mystery. The Dragon Man's skull shattered that boundary. Suddenly, a species known from fragments became tangible, with a complete cranial structure to study, bridging the gap between hypothesis and reality. Early analysis revealed jaw-dropping features. Their brain size measured 1,500 cubic centimeters, equivalent to modern humans, larger than Neanderthals' 1,400 cubic centimeters average. The skull combined an ancient robustness, massive brow ridges, broad palate, powerful jaw, with surprisingly modern facial geometry, a relatively flat face tucked neatly beneath the brain case. This combination should have been impossible according to the evolutionary timeline. Primitive traits coexisting with advanced facial structures did not occur naturally, yet here it was, preserved for 146,000 years, predating Homo sapiens' expansion beyond Africa. The Dragon Man's skull, forced scientists to rethink the human evolutionary tree entirely. Instead of a clean branching diagram, they faced a tangled web of overlapping populations, intersecting timelines, and coexisting species. Homo sapiens, confined to Africa at the time, were not alone. A sophisticated, cognitively capable species thrived in Asia. Parallel evolution, previously thought improbable, was not only possible, it had already happened, and that realization opened the floodgates. How many other human species might have existed, independently developing intelligence, tool use, and symbolic thought, only to vanish silently from the archaeological record? If you approve this style, I can continue with parts 2-6, keeping the flow uninterrupted, fully capturing the Denisovan story, cognitive convergence, behavioral adaptability, and the ultimate evolutionary lessons. The Dragon Man skull didn't just challenge assumptions, it rewrote the rules of human evolution. Its cranial capacity was as large as our own, yet its facial structure combined archaic strength with modern subtlety. The brow ridges were massive, the jaw robust, yet the face lay flat beneath the brain case, a configuration never predicted by textbook evolutionary models. This anomaly suggested one profound truth. Evolution was not a single, straight path. Instead, it was a mosaic, with multiple human species experimenting with cognition, survival strategies, and morphology across different continents simultaneously. Radiocarbon dating placed the Dragon Man at roughly 146,000 years old. At that time, Homo sapiens had not yet left Africa. While modern humans were still evolving on their home continent, a sophisticated species with equivalent brain power was thriving in East Asia. This reality forced paleoanthropologists to confront a humbling possibility. Intelligence alone did not guarantee survival. Other factors, adaptability, innovation, and behavioral flexibility, might have been just as critical. Genetic analysis revealed that modern humans and Denisovans coexisted for tens of thousands of years. When Homo sapiens began migrating into Asia around 50,000 to 60,000 years ago, the Denisovans were already established. Fossil and archaeological evidence showed no mass violence, no genocides, no decisive battles. These two intelligent species interbred repeatedly, leaving traces of Denisovan DNA, roughly 5% in the genomes of modern non-African populations. The evidence of coexistence and interbreeding was undeniable, yet, despite shared knowledge, technology, and even compatible reproduction, the Denisovans eventually disappeared, leaving Homo sapiens to dominate. The critical question remains, why? Both species possessed the neural architecture for complex thought. Both produced sophisticated tools and demonstrated symbolic behaviors. Both had the capacity for culture, planning, and innovation. But Homo sapiens survived while Denisovans vanished. The answer lies not in intelligence alone, but in the ability to respond to environmental challenges with flexibility and creativity. Behavioral plasticity, the capacity to rapidly innovate, reorganize social structures, and develop new survival strategies, may have been the decisive factor. Homo sapiens could adapt their hunting techniques, invent new tools, migrate to unfamiliar climates, and adjust cultural practices to shifting environmental pressures. Denisovans, while equally intelligent, appeared more specialized, their adaptations finely tuned to specific regional environments. When climate shifted or resources became scarce, their rigidity may have hindered survival. In contrast, Homo sapiens' ability to generalize across ecosystems allowed them to thrive in Ice Age tundras, tropical forests, deserts, and islands. This pattern of replacement highlights a subtle but critical evolutionary principle. Success is not defined by raw intelligence or brain size alone. It is defined by adaptability, innovation, and the ability to act on information faster than competitors can respond. Intelligence without flexibility is brittle. Sophistication without adaptability can be fatal. The story of Denisovans is a cautionary tale, a reminder that even highly capable species can fail if they cannot adjust to change. Archaeological evidence supports this interpretation. Denisovan sites show well-organized tool-making and cultural activity, but their spread remains geographically limited. Homo sapiens, entering these territories, gradually expanded, introducing innovations that allowed them to exploit new environments. Over millennia, Homo sapiens replaced Denisovans, not through warfare but through superior adaptability. Their brains were not bigger, their cognition not inherently superior, but their capacity to innovate socially and technologically gave them a decisive edge. The implications extend beyond paleoanthropology. If behavioral flexibility determined which species survived on Earth, what does it mean for intelligence in a broader sense? Could artificial intelligence, no matter how fast or powerful, succeed without the ability to adapt, to innovate, and to respond to unforeseen circumstances? Intelligence alone may be insufficient. True dominance, whether biological or technological, depends on adaptability. The Dragon Man skull and the story of the Denisovans teaches us that survival is not a measure of raw cognitive ability, but of responsiveness and innovation. Our species' triumph was not a foregone conclusion. It was a product of flexibility, ingenuity, and the capacity to turn knowledge into action faster than competitors. The evolutionary success of Homo sapiens reflects a lesson written across millennia. Change is inevitable, and the ability to change determines who survives. Examining the Denisovans more closely, their adaptations reveal a species finely tuned to its environment. Skeletal analysis shows robust builds capable of enduring harsh climates, powerful jaws suggesting a diet of diverse and tough foods, and cranial structures optimized for advanced cognition. Yet, despite these advantages, their specialization may have been a hidden vulnerability. They excelled in stable, familiar environments, but when climate shifts or resource scarcity occurred, their behavioral repertoire appears less flexible compared to Homo sapiens. The overlap of Denisovans and early modern humans in Asia spans roughly 20,000 years. This was no fleeting encounter. Multiple generations coexisted, exchanged genetic material, and shared landscapes. Fossil records and archaeological sites indicate parallel technological developments. Both species manufactured complex tools, used fire, and engaged in symbolic behavior. Yet Homo sapiens consistently expanded into new territories, while Denisovans' range remained relatively restricted. Their disappearance was gradual, a slow retreat under the pressure of a species capable of adjusting behaviors dynamically to meet changing environmental and social challenges. This convergence of intelligence across separate species challenges conventional evolutionary assumptions. Previously, brain size and cognitive potential were considered proxies for survival success. The Denisovans, however, demonstrate that high intelligence alone does not guarantee species dominance. Instead, evolutionary outcomes hinge on adaptability, the ability to innovate rapidly, reorganize social structures, and exploit new resources. Homo sapiens' success illustrates a principle often overlooked. Behavioral plasticity is as vital as neural capacity. Intelligence must be actionable. Knowledge must translate into adaptable strategy. The Denisovans' extinction also illuminates the subtle mechanics of human evolution. Genetic analysis confirms repeated interbreeding with Homo sapiens. Up to 5% of non-African human genomes carry Denisovan markers. These interactions imply cultural and biological exchange, yet Homo sapiens ultimately supplanted Denisovans. They didn't vanish in violent confrontations. Instead, the process was one of gradual displacement, a superior capacity to innovate socially and technologically, coupled with the ability to respond to environmental variability, tipped the scales. Over time, Homo sapiens expanded, while Denisovans contracted until they disappeared from the archaeological record. The Dragon Man skull underscores the sophistication of Denisovans and the complexity of human evolutionary history. Its combination of modern facial geometry with archaic robustness demonstrates that advanced cognitive potential emerged in more than one lineage. The conventional linear view of human evolution, a single branch progressing from primitive to modern, is no longer tenable. Instead, evolution is a dynamic network of populations experimenting with cognition, morphology, and survival strategies across different continents simultaneously. The skull forces us to recognize that multiple human species achieved intelligence independently, yet only one ultimately dominated due to behavioral flexibility rather than raw cognitive power. The implications extend beyond understanding our ancestors. This framework challenges how we consider intelligence itself. If adaptability, innovation, and flexible problem-solving determine which species survived, then any intelligence, biological or artificial, must possess these qualities to succeed. Cognitive capacity alone, even when measured in brain size or processing power, may be insufficient without the ability to act effectively under changing conditions. Evolution favored not the strongest brain, but the most adaptable mind. This insight also reframes how we view technology, society, and the future of intelligence. Modern humans' dominance was not inevitable. It was contingent upon adaptability and the ability to innovate socially and culturally in response to environmental pressures. Denisovans, equally intelligent, were constrained by their specialization. Their extinction reminds us that cognitive sophistication is only one part of survival. Behavioral flexibility is the other, equally critical, component. From the fossil record to genetic evidence, the narrative is consistent. Homo sapiens survived because they could change faster, innovate more effectively, and respond to crises with solutions that extended beyond their immediate circumstances. The Denisovans, while remarkable, were less capable in this dimension. Their disappearance illustrates a universal principle. Intelligence without adaptability is vulnerable. Knowledge without action is insufficient. The ability to transform insight into adaptive behavior determines the course of evolution. The story of Denisovans is not only one of biology, but of culture, technology, and social sophistication. Archaeological evidence from sites across Asia reveals that Denisovans were capable toolmakers. Stone tools exhibit deliberate design, precision flaking, and adaptation to local resources. They were not merely surviving, they were shaping their environment to meet their needs. Ornaments, pigment use, and potential ritual artifacts suggest symbolic thinking, indicating abstract cognition, social cohesion, and the capacity for cultural transmission. These behaviors are markers of advanced intelligence, demonstrating that Denisovans were not primitive hominins, but fully capable cultural agents. Yet even with such cognitive abilities, Denisovans lacked one crucial edge: behavioral flexibility on a species-wide scale. They could invent and refine within a localized niche, but when conditions shifted, whether through climate change, resource scarcity, or the arrival of Homo sapiens, their strategies could not scale effectively. Homo sapiens, by contrast, exhibited rapid adaptive behaviors, changing hunting techniques, diversifying diet, creating new social alliances, and modifying toolkits to fit new terrains. Their ability to generalize solutions across environments allowed them to expand into areas previously dominated by Denisovans, gradually outcompeting them without direct conflict. Genetic evidence adds another layer to this story. The DNA traces of Denisovans in modern non-African humans tell of repeated interbreeding events. This was not a one-off encounter, but a prolonged, complex interaction over thousands of years. Homo sapiens and Denisovans shared genes, technologies, and even possibly cultural knowledge. Yet, Despite this exchange, Homo sapiens became the dominant lineage, illustrating that shared intelligence does not guarantee equal evolutionary outcomes. Success is determined by the capacity to adapt behaviorally across diverse conditions, not simply by neural complexity or raw intellect. The Dragon Man's skull forces us to confront a new reality. Human evolution was not linear, but a network of overlapping populations experimenting with cognition and survival. Parallel intelligence evolved independently across continents. In some cases, species like Denisovans achieved brain sizes and cognitive potential on par with Homo sapiens. They produced tools, engaged in symbolic thought, and maintained complex social structures. The difference was adaptability. Behavioral plasticity allowed Homo sapiens to survive environmental upheavals, migrate across continents, and colonize diverse ecosystems. Denisovans, for all their intelligence, were specialists remarkable in their own right, but ultimately less versatile. This insight reshapes our understanding of what it means to be intelligent. Intelligence is not measured solely by brain size or problem-solving ability. It is measured by the capacity to apply knowledge flexibly in unpredictable situations. Homo sapiens' dominance was not guaranteed by superior cognition alone. It was the combination of intelligence with the ability to innovate, adapt, and adjust behavior to new circumstances. The extinction of Denisovans shows that rigid brilliance cannot compete with flexible competence. Examining their tools, we see evidence of specialized techniques, some of which appear tailored for specific ecological niches. Yet these techniques, while sophisticated, were less adaptable when environments shifted or new competitors arrived. Homo sapiens, on the other hand, could take a principle from one context and apply it to another, scaling solutions across different terrains and climates. This behavioral flexibility created a cumulative advantage that Denisovans, despite their remarkable intelligence, could not match. Moreover, the social structures of Homo sapiens likely amplified their adaptability. Cooperation, communication, and the sharing of innovations allowed knowledge to propagate rapidly through populations. Denisovans may have had similar capacities on a smaller scale, but the evidence suggests they lacked the systemic networks that enabled Homo sapiens to respond collectively to environmental pressures. This difference in social organization, paired with behavioral plasticity, created a decisive evolutionary edge. The Denisovan story is a lesson in evolutionary strategy. Raw cognitive power, symbolic thought, and advanced culture are not sufficient on their own to guarantee survival. Success depends on the ability to act on intelligence, adapt strategies to changing conditions, and coordinate socially to manage environmental and competitive pressures. Homo sapiens' triumph was not inevitable. It was a product of these combined capacities, a testament to the power of adaptability as the ultimate evolutionary tool. The lessons from Denisovans extend far beyond the past. When we examine modern human behavior, the echoes of these evolutionary dynamics are still visible. Homo sapiens' capacity for innovation, for rapid adaptation to shifting conditions, is the same trait that allowed our ancestors to survive alongside and eventually replace other human species. It is a pattern repeated throughout history. Societies that can adjust to new technologies, changing climates, or unpredictable social dynamics tend to thrive, while those that cannot often collapse or vanish. Flexibility, not just intelligence, defines survival. This principle also provides a lens through which we can examine emerging artificial intelligence systems. Biological intelligence operates under constraints: speed, energy use, and limited memory. AI, by contrast, can process information at speeds and volumes far exceeding human capacity, but raw processing power alone does not guarantee success. The Denisovan example reminds us that intelligence without behavioral flexibility, the ability to adapt strategies, modify approaches, and respond dynamically to changing conditions is incomplete. AI systems must be designed with the capacity to innovate in response to unforeseen circumstances, not just execute programmed tasks flawlessly. Otherwise, even superior cognitive power may fail in unpredictable environments. The evolutionary overlap between Homo sapiens and Denisovans also offers insights into coexisting intelligences. For tens of thousands of years, both species inhabited the same regions of Asia, interacting, interbreeding, and sharing resources. Yet Homo sapiens' behavioral plasticity allowed them to outlast the species with equivalent cognitive potential. Applied to AI, this raises critical questions. Could multiple intelligence systems coexist? Could an AI, no matter how advanced, be outcompeted if it lacks adaptive flexibility in social, technological, or environmental contexts? The Denisovan model suggests that coexistence alone is not sufficient for long-term survival. The ability to respond creatively and strategically is what matters. In the archaeological record, we also see how Homo sapiens leveraged social networks to propagate knowledge. Cooperative structures allowed rapid diffusion of innovation, tools, and strategies across vast populations. Denisovans, while intelligent and capable of tool-making, likely lacked large-scale systems of knowledge transfer. This disparity created a cumulative advantage where each generation of Homo sapiens could innovate on the previous generation's solutions, compounding adaptability over time. Intelligence alone does not scale. Social organization enables it to transform into lasting survival advantage. Furthermore, examining the Denisovan genome provides another striking insight. Interbreeding between Homo sapiens and Denisovans was not merely incidental. Genes related to high-altitude adaptation, immune function, and other physiological traits entered the Homo sapiens lineage, providing subtle but meaningful advantages. This demonstrates that survival is not only about outperforming competitors, but also about absorbing beneficial traits from interaction, a principle of adaptive intelligence that goes beyond individual or species-level cognitive capacity. Flexibility encompasses both behavior and biology. By combining genetics, archaeology, and paleontology, a cohesive picture emerges. Homo sapiens' dominance was not preordained by superior intellect, but by a suite of traits enabling adaptability. Large brains, symbolic thought, and cultural sophistication were necessary but not sufficient. It was the ability to adjust behavior rapidly, innovate in response to new pressures, maintain cooperative networks, and integrate advantageous traits from other populations that created a decisive edge. Behavioral plasticity became the engine of survival, shaping the course of human evolution in ways that raw cognitive potential could not. The story of Denisovans reframes the meaning of intelligence itself. Intelligence is no longer a measure of brain size, abstract reasoning, or tool use alone. True intelligence, in an evolutionary sense, is the combination of cognitive capability and adaptive responsiveness, the capacity to navigate uncertainty, modify strategies in real time, and leverage social and environmental resources effectively. Homo sapiens' triumph over Denisovans underscores that flexibility, not just smarts, defines the trajectory of a species. In the context of emerging technology, this principle could not be more relevant. The rise of AI systems challenges us to consider intelligence as a multidimensional property where computational power, learning speed, and problem-solving ability must intersect with adaptability, creativity, and responsiveness to dynamic environments. Just as Homo sapiens outcompeted Denisovans through behavioral plasticity, artificial systems may only succeed if they can match or exceed this adaptive capacity.